today's program, we speak to the Managing Director of Caribbean Immigrant Services, a group that is at the forefront of lobbying for regularization of Caribbean immigrants to the United States. He's also the founder and the CEO of Team Jamaica Bickle. I speak of none other than Mr. Irwine Clare, OD. Welcome to the conversation. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you very much.
Now, whenever we talk of the diaspora, we generally include them in the conversation that has to do with remittance. Remittance is how much money you're able to send back. And admittedly, that's because most of us, we have family relatives there, family members there, and we're interested to get the support. But you recognize that it goes much further than that, to the extent that you are very, very involved in the day-to-day activities of Jamaica, your homeland. So where we want to start now is, where do you see the diaspora in terms of its contributions to the country now, in this day and age?
Well, it's an evolving situation. It's a conversation that has also caused animus, you know. People have varying opinions and ideas. The fact of the matter is that Jamaicans, wherever they live, make it Jamaica. They do so because it is our way of expanding Jamaica. We are passionate about our culture, passionate about our food, passionate about our music, our sports, what makes us Jamaicans. We don't just take things the way they are, we put the Jamaican side to it. With that being said, and I speak from that perspective, I speak for the majority. There are persons who will have different opinions and that will not be as vociferously in their expounding themselves as Jamaicans. But in general, we are passionate about our nation. And with that, we try to keep abreast as to what takes place here. Because, as you rightfully say, we have family members here, we have friends, and we also have, in totality, responsibilities in other quarters. And so remittance becomes that mechanism, or I should say that impetus that causes the relationship to spur off into different areas, and the need for involvement, and the need to know, and the need to do. And so Jamaicans, in essence, I like to say that we are the largest flag-waving part of the nation, outside the nation, because, as I said, wherever we go, you know, we make it Jamaican as a part of the outgrowth of the physical nation itself.
Do you think that the fact that a large swath of your contribution comes to us in the form of remittances, do you think that gives you a sense of entitlement? Is that
I wouldn't use that word. There are some people who might want to think that. I am opposed to that. Nothing what we do gives us entitlement. And that's a dangerous terminology, although it has positive sides to it, but the negative sides of it is usually the one that gets highlighted. It gives us a sense of responsibility, all right, and an opportunity to partner. And those are the things that I think that we need to be spending a lot more time on, and because there are many opportunities there that, as I like to use the term, you know, the fruits that are the low-hanging fruits, you know, and I think that's where we need to spend more of our time than to be caught up in those who may aspire to go about the entitlement role. Just because doesn't grant you. You know, there are other factors that plays more important factors there. And there are many Jamaicans who are availing themselves to be part of that whole dynamic. But they may choose different angles.
Yeah. So I was leafing through the local papers, and I happened to come across Diaspora Duel. And
makes a nice headline, by the way.
Yes, definitely.
Diaspora Duel, yeah.
So I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing where it is pretty much saying that, based on the dissatisfaction with how the governance of the country is being executed, that members of the diaspora in the US and in the UK are thinking about taking protest action They cited a number of things. The top 3 would have been public corruption, violent crimes, and unfulfilled promises on the part of the administration or the government. What are your views on that?
You know, I have been following it, and the messages, these are salient points. I saw where the messengers are being, taken aimed at, and for whatever reasons. But the points are strong points. The points are points that people in the diaspora are concerned about, and that people in Jamaica are concerned about here too. The urgency for resolve is critical. There are those who feel that more should be done. And again, I go back now because there are those who will say, now, what makes us think that we should be? We cannot have it both ways, because our leaders and those here in Jamaica recognize Jamaicans wherever we are and our importance. But with our importance also comes some sense of responsibility by those who say we are also important. We also have to hold them accountable. And I think that there are folks in the diaspora who choose to exercise their right by their actions they have. Do I have differences of opinions? Yes, I do. But largely in part, I agree with the points that have been raised. We can do better as a nation. And I think people are angered by the fact that we have not been able to. And so it brings forth these type of situations. You're not going to have 100% agreement on everything.
But do you think that the idea of taking protest action now, do you think that is warranted now, here and now? Because we have been doing better.
Yeah, but if not now, when? Yes, we've been doing better. There's an expectation for us to do better. I mean, there are people who work hard in and outside of government to make Jamaica better, and they must be lauded. But we have some overarching situation here that continues to morph some of these significant gains that we're making. It's like we're running, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And we want to get there quickly. We want to get there. We want to accomplish the race. So I'm just saying that there are some things that needs to be addressed and are not being addressed because so many things happen. Something happens today, becomes a 9-day wonder before it's even resolved. We move on to the next. It just keeps piling and piling. It's not building a good consensus. It's not building good confidence. And people are concerned. So yes, people have a right to demonstrate. If not now, when? It's a matter of opinion.
So it's not a matter of too much too soon. You don't think so?
No. In fact, the same way we expect our sports people to go out there and win, right? The same way we expect them to win, and we're not satisfied if they don't win. It's the same way we expect our leaders to win.
So it's funny that you would use
a sports analogy,
considering that you're heavily involved in sports and how we move forward in terms of sports. But another thing that they had spoken about, looking at the article, was service delivery, engagement and communication, as well as the impact on brand Jamaica. But another thing, though, was the idea of there being dissatisfaction with the legal defense, asserting that diaspora members do not have the standing to sue the government. Help us to understand that.
Well, that is something that, I'd leave to those in a better position to respond to. There was court filing recently of Jamaican in the diaspora as it relates to his lawsuit with Minister of Government here, and how it has been perceived by many, and I stand corrected. It's been perceived by many as if because we are in the diaspora, we don't have certain rights to engage or to partake in certain aspect of the legal framework as it relates to that. And I think dialogue needs to be done on that for a better understanding. Because really and truly, you're basically saying it's okay to do all of this, but it's not okay to do that. So it's like saying, are we 3/5 of a person? Are we 100%? You see, so I'm saying that, the legal framework, as to where that is concerned, there needs to be a better dialogue on that. I think we got caught up in the whole nuances about who says what, and that aspect of it, I think, needs a better clarification.
Okay, because I'm thinking, though, where the point that you raised about being 3/5 of a person, as an example, I'm thinking that the fact that you are not domiciled here would necessarily hinder you from being able to fulfill certain obligations. All right, so isn't it a case whereby we should keep it that way, where the fact that you're not domiciled here means that you don't have certain privileges?
And this is where now the conversation comes in now. So, but you take the resources. You see? And that's where the conversation, and that's where the whole situation entitlement would come in.
Yeah.
And it's a delicate scenario, and I'm quite certain within the whole legal apparatus that that aspect may not even be so. That there is room to do that. Because just like an investor may invest in Jamaica and there's a challenge in their arrangement, they have a right to sue.
Yes. Oh, so it's pretty much based on the fact that you have been able to take part in the country to that extent, then you want to have the autonomy and the right to sue.
Well, if that is the, if you cauterize it from that perspective.
Okay.
Again, the decision and that's why I said more dialogue is required on the explanations of what the judge said or what the outcome was. And I think that's where the angst is, and I think it has triggered a lot of scenarios. But there are people more equipped to deal with that aspect. But it goes back again, though. And you mentioned in your statement there, the whole governance, all right? And there was a time, and there are still people out there who feel like Jamaicans overseas should be voting because they X, Y, Z. All right, fine. From where Irwine Clare sits, I believe in the whole situation of domicility, as far as voting is concerned. Because it's the same thing in the United States, though. You don't just move into a city and you vote the next day. There's a certain time frame there. I think that there are other steps that can be taken. There are opportunities for Jamaicans with the skill set and the experience and the due diligence who can be available to serve on several governmental boards here in Jamaica. Whether it be school boards, whether it be some of your boards that run all the various facilities of government, there are people with the necessary skill sets who could bring in a different resolve as part of the transparency process, as part of helping to reduce the corruption that seems to have taken over so many of our entities. There are opportunities like that we could explore. And more of it, and I know that there are some Jamaicans who sit on some of the corporate boards. So we should be expanding that now into public boards. When you think of it, Jamaicans, when you look at two pillars that jumps out right now, and I leave sports out of it, health and education. These are areas where you find significant contributions of Jamaicans into those areas. Jamaicans are some of the best health professionals in the world because most of them were trained there and they went to the United States and became better. And they're now in a position where they want to remit their expertise and wherewithal. These are people who should be on some of these boards, whether at the school board level and some of these boards that manage many of the affairs here in Jamaica. I think that when you start to insert persons of those caliber, I think it helps to usher in that kind of new diaspora relations that is so critical to really grow out the missive that we have at hand.
All right. So we're just going to go for a quick break. You are watching The Conversation. I am speaking with Mr. Irwine Clare, OD. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Conversation, where we are having a discussion with the Managing Director of Caribbean Immigrant Services, Mr. Irwine Clare, OD. Now, just before the break, we started looking at governance and governance structure. Do you think then that we need to, because there's a whole heap of conversation or dialogue that has been going around, especially with, for
Constitutional
example,
reform.
constitutional
Yes,
reform.
yes, yes.
Do you think now that there needs to be a greater voice from members of the diaspora so that they can actually have a stronger input in how we shape our future going forward as a nation?
Yes, and I think the dialogue is there. Enough of it isn't taking place as we would have expected. I gather as the conversation, as the Constitutional Reform Committee continues on what their plans are, you'll be hearing more of the inclusion of such. There are conversations taking place in the diaspora on that. One of the things for me, as we see the situation we're talking about, is one of the contentious issues is that there's an encouragement, quasi-encouragement by even leaders that when you live in a foreign country, try and participate, get yourself involved and participate in the civic duties and responsibilities there, because it can have positive repercussions for Jamaica, because you're in a position to effectuate change, then it means you're in a position to make decisions that could impact Jamaica. And that's an encouragement, and we even have our ambassadors and our consul generals encourage the Jamaicans in general, if you're in the United States and you qualify for citizenship, become a citizen. So that is taking place. Lots of Jamaicans are citizens. We're now at a stage where we're dealing with constitutional reform. I think it's now high time. When you consider that somebody, because they're in the Commonwealth and they come from Australia, they can come down there and have more rights than a Jamaican who's a U.S. citizen who was born here, but the Australian, because he's a member of the Commonwealth, has more rights than us in the political framework of things. I think there's an opportunity to address that.
Oh, so you're saying then, because typically how we look at it is that you can't run two houses. You are there and you are there. You have, and I think the misunderstanding sometimes come from the fact that we make the assumption that if you have claimed or been granted U.S. citizenship, then it means that you're rescinded the Jamaican citizenship.
We're dual nationals. We're dual nationals.
Okay.
You see, we're dual nationals because I maintain my Jamaican passport. Nobody's going to take away my Jamaican passport from me. But I'm a United States citizen. But if I were to come back home to be involved in elective office according to the rules and regulations and the law here, I'd have to give up my U.S. citizenship. All right? No, that is something that an individual has to decide on. But I'm just using the example. From what I understand, if you're in a part of the Commonwealth, you're in Australia. I use Australia because the Australian Open is taking place now. You can come here and participate in the political processes meeting certain criteria. You're still an Australian.
And you would be required to rescind your Australian citizenship.
You're an Australian. You're part of the Commonwealth because the Canadian citizens don't have that challenge. The United States, because we're not part of the Commonwealth. So I'm just saying that I think there's an opportunity in there, and I may not be articulating it in a manner of speaking that fulfills all the criteria, but there's an opportunity there for the framers or the persons who are involved right now to look back at this whole situation as relates to dual nationality, United States and Jamaica.
All right. What other areas, though, in the whole reform process of the Constitution that you think would be near and dear to you as well as to other members of the diaspora?
Well, every morning that we're going to ask the Lord to save the king. No, that one has to go. Respect due to the monarchy, but I think it's now time to, the monarchy remains where it's at in England. I think that we are a nation that has now been over 64 years as an independent nation, over 60 odd years as an independent nation. I think it's now time for us to remove the monarchy as the head of our government. We need to develop a political system that suits our own, right? So I believe in that whole structure being Jamaican. I also believe, too, that our justice, our system of justice should be our own. The Caribbean Court of Justice should be the Supreme Court for that administers our justice, not the Privy Council. But that's my opinion.
There are also members, though, of the same diaspora who would say that there are concerns about public corruption. And that's primarily one of the reasons why they think that we should hold on to the Privy Council vis-a-vis the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Yeah, and there's no corruption in the Privy Council. But the point is that some of our best jurists, We cannot have it a situation where my child, for example, is a pharmacist. When she advised me on taking the vaccine, she says, Dad, the vaccine is good. I believe her. It's my child. I sent her to the best school and she was trained. We have some of the best jurists within the Caribbean region, proven. And we're saying that we can't trust them? Something's wrong with that. Well, but we can trust the next guy who was part of our old enslavement for all these years? I find something wrong with that. That's personally speaking.
Yeah, and you do have a point, though, you know.
Yeah.
But
and I understand the whole situation of corruption, you know, don't get me wrong.
Because that's what they're looking at. You know. They're looking at the fact that it's difficult because reason from their point of view, you know, it would appear as though there are not enough or there aren't sufficient systems or mechanisms in place to minimize corruption locally. So because that's not the case, send it to somebody outside who can look at it.
And as one person said to me, said, sometimes arguments are pushed like that. And some of the people probably were so indebted in the corruption through us that I think there's an analogy for this. Steve don't like to see
Steve don't like with long bad.
All right. But yeah, and they have a right to. But I'm just saying from where I stand, and if we were to seriously talk about ourselves as being an emancipated people and a people who can, you know, and I understand the whole corruption piece, but our jurists, I don't think there's ever been any charge like that against the Caribbean Court of Justice.
No, I think that's, it seemed to be sentiments that are being echoed primarily by Jamaicans, whether they're at home or they're abroad, because even with the protest action, that's supposed to be happening based on what the papers have said. There seemed to be a difference of opinion. Some persons are thinking that it will definitely affect Brand Jamaica negatively if you should take such action. What are your views on that?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I think it shows us as a people who are serious about tackling the issues at hand, recognizing, yes, that there is corruption, but there are still good people amongst us who are enshrined in this whole system of making it work. And we can't, you see, again here, we're giving these mixed signals because we cannot be saying that we're world beaters out there, Brand Jamaican. Oh, but we have to acquiesce to England to solve our issues. Something is wrong with that. You know, so it's now time. I think we're at a point now in the whole scheme of things. The legacy that we leave our children, what are we saying to them? Oh, you know, children, we don't trust ourselves, you know. That's why we go to the guy there in England to tell us what to do. You know, and I get it. Or
it might be a case whereby we want an extra perspective, someone who is outside looking in.
Okay, well, then
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I hear that too, but we must begin to start having confidence in ourselves. And I go back to those again. Our ambassadors who are out there on the front line fighting on behalf of Brand Jamaica. We have to give them enough wind under their sails and confidence that when they're out there, it's because they have a nation that believes in itself. A nation that believes in its people. Because, you know, many people tell you now that Jamaicans are a unique set of people. You guys are great. Yeah, but, you know, we have to go to England to tell us how to manage our...
All right, so let's say that we now become a republic. One, we have relieved ourselves of the Privy Council, and now we're
the
fully
monarchy
Jamaican.
and all
the monarchy is divested and all of that. How do you envision that kind of structure? Because, you know, we can have a president like the US, but then you wouldn't necessarily need to have a prime minister. Or we can have a president like Trinidad or Barbados or Guyana, and you still have a prime minister. What would you recommend? What's that?
You know, for me, I live and most of my life as it relates to political and existence in the United States, and I see how their system works. It's not necessarily the best, but it's a good example. I think that first and foremost, our people must have the right to elect their leaders. Because really and truly, power really resides at the local level, you know. Because the first access to political involvement is technically your counselor in the real scheme of things. I mean, forget how it's, you know, that may not be so now. they're the ones who you have a closer connect to. Because, for example, I live in New York. I have access easier to my councilman than I ever have access to the President of the United States. I'll never get to the President of the United States because there are the varying layers of management before then. You have your city councilor who administers what happens on your road, your hospitals, your schools.
Yeah,
you have
not much different here.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying to you, that the power really resides there. So therefore, our system of government, I believe, should really double down on that empowerment. You know, because when we start thinking that it is that power rests within the realms of the prime minister primarily, then I believe then that we might as well remain where we are.
So you're saying that the system is upside down?
Technically, yes. Because if I want water in my road, am I going to run to the prime minister? No, I run to my councillor. But the councillor must be further empowered, or the councillor to the member of parliament. You know, those are the persons who are managing my daily existence. Those who manage my overall perspective of where the country is at a higher level. Your executives. You know, so you have to ask me what kind of system I'd like. Yeah, similar to the United States, a president, and then I have persons appointed with the skill sets who's good at education, who's good at healthcare, who's not necessarily elected, appointed, an executive branch to manage the country. And then the overarching members of parliament, elected officials, give the mandate as to how to proceed. And then let the guy with the expertise run the show. Listen, no disrespect to a member of parliament, but we're saying to a member of parliament who has never worked in corporate America to run some corporation. Hello? Are all our ministers necessarily have the skill set, or they rely heavily on persons who are their second in command, or whatever the case may be? I'm saying that when you look at an executive, you assemble persons with the skill set from corporate Jamaica, assemble persons from the skill set from health Jamaica, education, people with expertise, let them put together their teams and run the nation. You still have a prime minister, he's vetoing all this stuff. That's how I look at it. They run as a business.
So I want you to hold that thought. We'll be right back after these messages. You are watching The Conversation. I am Kwame Thomas. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Conversation, where we're having a discussion with Mr. Irwine Clare. Just before the break, you stated, or you intimated that we needed to switch the political system.
Flip it, right? I think it's top heavy,
so
man.
Is it that the bureaucratic process is too long or it's too heavy that it's no longer serving the intended purpose?
Yeah, I think the bureaucracy is part of our challenge. I think even the Prime Minister says that too. To get certain things done, have you seen the layers that it goes through?
No, we know, and that, so, but sometimes though...
and that's not to say it's not for, I'm just talking about efficiency here now.
Well, I'm trying to link it back now to what you had stated earlier. We looked at concerns about public corruption. Do you think that because the bureaucratic system is so heavily layered, then that might have been, or that might be one of the reasons why corruption, as many persons have said it, even in the article, is so rampant?
It's quite possible. Because, for example, if you need to get a decision, see, I have to follow the rules that we have now. You give license to the person to pay a man on the side to get it done. And I see, I use an example. Sometimes I come to the airport and you follow all the rules and regulations. And you see a guy will come through with certain things and say, how did that happen? I don't know, but it just happened. And I'm here following the rules and regulations, and 3 hours later, I'm still here. So you're like, are you waiting for certain documents or certain things to be done? And a man said, better just give a man. The system encourages corruption. So we have to find some way to fine-tune that. so we can close the door on that side. You know, not too much, you know, the process here, is it all necessary? I remember once, you know, I had the privilege of hosting the Prime Minister when he had his town hall forum when he won, and he came to Jamaica, Queens. And I said to him at the time, I don't remember the response, I said to him, I said, Prime Minister, there are things that we know it takes 5 days. But when you put it through the system, there's a system that says, no, it has to be 15. We must put 15 days on it. For no reason at all. It just sits there. There has to be a lengthier process. And I said, PM, if we can work on moving things quicker through the system. And he says, yes, he agreed. So I think our leaders probably are aware of that too. I don't know why we aren't able to get to that point.
Is it that we don't have the will to change, to make those changes?
I will not say that we don't have the will, because it's quite possible, yes.
All right. Talk to me about another thing that was mentioned in the document, high levels of crime and high level of violent crimes. How do you envision the government effectively being able to address the high levels of violent crime in Jamaica, and what specific actions or policies do you believe would make any meaningful impact?
Without not being an expert, I can't speak on policies, but I'll say this, that, you know, and I see the statistics, and if we can save one life, that's awesome. But, you know, and I know we're moving from some astronomical high numbers.
Well, there's been a reduction in crime to the extent of 7.3%.
Yeah.
We're now at 1393.
Right, but when you look on where it's coming from too, you know, it's still a lot of people we're losing, all right? So I say credit to the authorities and to the initiatives that have been taken to mitigate crime, and maybe it's just a guy never feel like go out and kill somebody today, I don't know, right? Or the weather conditions were not conducive for it. You know, it could be a whole lot of factors, not necessarily because we're putting things, because we still have this disdain and hatred for each other. That is also a significant portion of the whole crime. How we treat each other as brothers and sisters and families and friends and just Jamaicans. We are very unkind to each other. That is nothing that any kind of legislation can be put in place to thwart. Huh? Kudos, though. I hear the Commissioner of Police spoke about, you know, the attitudes towards the police seem to be inching up, but then the statistics, then poll says something different. We can't seem to wrap ourselves around this dragon.
So one of the things that I had the privilege of speaking with one of the co-chairs, well, both co-chairs of the Advocates Network Jamaica, and as well as some of the other advocates across the country. And one of the things that they stated was that crime is a social issue.
Mm-hmm.
I
should say, it's also a social issue.
It's also a social issue. And the approach that we're taking is that we're pretty much just putting
criminals,
a small band-aid
yes.
and a big wound.
Yeah.
And so we're not doing what are some of those social policies? Well, you're not a policy expert, but what are those social things that we can actually help to fix?
Well, when we look at young people being involved in this whole crime, and I hear politicians speak about hang them and stuff, that's like, it's a cold day for us in paradise, right? When we start associating hang them to our young people. You know what I mean? Then what of the future, right? The whole situation, how we deal with our young people now from the education process, are we engaging them enough in the classroom? What is taking place there? Then somebody will say, well, boy, you have kids having kids today, so therefore the family structure is broken down. It's a whole conundrum of things, you know? And then here comes the police inside, because that's where most of the activities seem to be on, the police inside, that's where most of the budgeting seemed to be spent. But then I remember once a minister once said that they didn't see any value that came from all these social interventions, all this money spent, and there was nothing to show for it. I don't know. But all I do know is that our leaders have to continue working with civil society and all and sundry, those who are willing to come to the table and give of themselves and their skill sets to find solution. I don't think this resolves in any government. It has to be a movement. It has to be a people involved here. You know, the expectation that government is going to solve crime is, I can probably tell you that the Brooklyn Bridge is for sale as well. Government is not going to solve crime by itself. It's a collective. And I'm not certain that our leaders have really put together that collective across political lines, religious lines, to deal with this whole situation.
But what kind of insights, though, can members of the diaspora put to that? Because I remember in one of our earlier conversations, you would have stated that Jamaica has one of the highest per capita output of PhD persons, of qualified persons, but yet still it seems as though we're not getting a handle on some of these issues.
It doesn't seem that we're utilizing their skill sets. But we also have many Jamaicans in the diaspora, and that's also one of the beef in that whole situation. So many Jamaicans in the diaspora who are in law enforcement, wherever they are, and are willing to help. And I think from the conversations out here, they don't feel readily acceptable by the authorities here. I don't think enough has been done to involve them, you know? And so there's angst there. So I think that those charged with responsibility of law enforcement, you know, when we look at our Jamaican brothers and sisters, who many have gone abroad, wherever they are, and gotten great experience and access to resources, let's bring them into the table. Let's bring them into the conversation. Let's bring them into the conversation. Don't leave them out there to do things that maybe you may consider detrimental to the nation.
But how would that look, though? How would something like that look in terms of engaging the services of someone in, given what you had stated about the fact that they're not from the Commonwealth anymore, you're now in a different jurisdiction. How would something like that,
how would it work?
Look? Yeah.
I'll give you an example. As we speak, Jaja Foundation is down there conducting healthcare missions throughout Jamaica. Jamaicans and friends of Jamaica who volunteer their time, pay their hotel, pay their fare, bring down the resources, and are now providing health outreach to Jamaicans. You know, which is a major contributor to the health processes here in Jamaica. And you have many healthcare situations like that. They bring the stuff in. Many of these people are not asking for pay, are not asking for a contract. They're saying that, hey, help us, allow us to be part of the whole dialogue here and the whole situation as to how we could implement certain things. You know, I mean, so I'm just saying that if we have those, it's low-hanging fruits again. The same thing with our teaching profession. As we speak, there are members of the Union of Jamaican Alumni Association are right now meeting at the University of Technology with some engineering students because they have brought in resources to augment the process. Because government and people can't do it alone. Not when we have the potential of the diaspora out there. Let us find meaningful ways to engage them. That way, you'll shut us up too, because we'll be working. Instead of, you want to say demonstrating, right? Okay.
So, no, because I was tempted to ask. You know, I asked you earlier if you think it's warranted, and you said yes. But so you're pretty much saying that we have not been engaged in the diaspora to the extent that we ought to. Right. Meaningful. And efforts have been made. I'm not going to say the ministers and all those. Yeah, they are. But if these things are still happening, we haven't gotten there yet. More needs to be done. More needs to be done. So before I get to your assessment of the country and its governance structure, I want to find out, there's this idea of the government's failure in terms of service delivery. That was one of the things that was spoken of by, I think, Nathaniel Pete and
Colonel Captain Francis?
Captain Francis as well, you know, regarding the government's failure to provide promised service delivery. I'm not sure if there are any specific things that you could talk about, but what is this thing in terms of the government's failure?
I think one of the things that, and we've seen this from governments all the time, promises made to the diaspora about representation, whether it be in the Senate or when they get to government, they'll do these things. And I think you usually find many times these arguments comes when probably you're in opposition, you say it, but when you get into government, then I guess other issues come up, right? Because I've heard that many times from both sides, representation in the Senate. All right, something to look at. I think also too, when you look at service deliverabilities, delivering certain things that were promised, that from the standpoint of whether we are able to do certain things here on island. There are many groups who still feel that there's a lot of roadblocks in some of the things they would like to do that people are requesting, and I use the healthcare scenario as an example. And you know, it's a myriad of things, and sometimes you find out too that after you have dialogue, you find out that some of these things are easily dealt with. You know, I'm not certain if even as we look at the setup of those who represent in the diaspora and give advice to the minister, I'm not certain even the structure as it is right now that it is a workable one, right? And ideas has come forward, like for example, when you look at the success of our tourism product, let's use it as a blueprint. Use it as a blueprint. And I say success, and I think people will have different varying ideas, but I'm looking at numbers and how the brand is powerful out there. You have some very good people in the JTB, and I use the JTB as a structure. Maybe we need to have a JTB-like structure for the diaspora. You bring in representatives from the diaspora, representatives from Jamaica, and we set out our mandates, and you have it properly funded, and you go there. Because you see, there's also this other situation too, that we sometimes get the impression that Jamaica and our leaders want from the diaspora without putting in the investment.
But isn't there such a structure though? Because there's a global Jamaica diaspora
but I'm saying that structure, I'm not certain is resonating well within the diaspora. Because when you look at those who supposedly vote, if you're going to suppose we have 3 million people in the diaspora, and I don't think 5,000 people voted, something is amiss there. So that whole expectation of participation was not realized.
So you're saying that we didn't do enough consultation when we even started that section, so it's difficult
the structure. It's a matter of structure. You know, there's some things you can't expect to be elected to be on it, to serve. We have persons in the diaspora in consuls and embassies who have a fair understanding as to who the influencers are in the community and with the skill sets. Put together a team to manage the structure to the point where we are comfortable enough now to say, well, we can have elections because people say, oh yeah, there's a structure there. We don't have that. You ask the average person on the ground, what is this Jamaica Global, that? Huh? What is that? You know, so that's why I use a JTB, for example. They're able to put together a team targeted with certain responsibilities and go out there and work. It's the same thing in the diaspora. If we're saying the diaspora sends on remittances of what, $3-5 billion a year, which other agency does that? And by the way, thank goodness to your entities out here like the Grace Kennedys and the Lascos or wherever. You know, I don't mention the international term. Don't go there. But anyway, who are doing their marketing.
Yeah.
Just imagine that you put together a well-funded entity, a minuscule of whatever ministry will be charged down here, to engage the diaspora because you're looking for funding, you're looking for that. Hey, you have to put money into something to make money. You can't just expect persons just because. No, it don't work like that. And I think that's where we need to go with this. Managing it like a business, because that's what it is.
Oh.
Philanthropy doesn't mean that it's just a person giving, you know. Philanthropy is a business. It's a business. And the diaspora to date has not been dealt as a business. People volunteer at the time. Persons there are expected to find their monies to do this, to find monies to plan meetings. No. A budget must be put in place. If this is seriously about engaging the diaspora, put together a budget and put together a structure that will go out and meet your expectations.
So you're not being engaged enough, meaningfully. You're not being facilitated. So it's as though we want your help, but we're not helping you to help us.
That's my opinion, and I've been at this game for a long time now. Because you'll find that's why people use the term, it's like an ATM. You just go there and punch it in and you get money. Punch it in, you get money. You know, and I once say that we felt like as if we were an ATM. And I meant that. We have to have skin in the game too. You know, and why this becomes even more important is that as lesser and lesser Jamaicans migrate and have a need to send back money, we're going to have to come up with new dimensions and new methodologies as to how we keep the diaspora engaged. You see? Because the whole migration numbers will tail off. You see? You see? And the point is that you'll have a lot more persons now who may not necessarily have to send money back home.
So in lastly, what I'd want to get from you is just your assessment of the government. And I'm not talking about the administration, I'm talking about the government. How would you rate our performance so far? And you can go as wide as you want to.
You asked me that in a political season, man.
You can go as wide as you want to. You can go as wide as you want to.
Listen, a lot of expectations was made of Andrew Holness management, government, fresh resolve. There are people who are still somewhat disappointed. Some people are happy. There are some good things that have taken place. There are still some things that are worrisome. The whole monster corruption seems to be one of the biggest ones. Unfulfilled mandates. I think that we still have a vibrant political system. I hope that we can get more people participating in the electoral process, because we need to maintain our democracy. We have people with good intention. Effort should be given to support them and become more inclusive. And I may be naive to believe that we can do away with tribalism, but the resolve for solving Jamaicans' issue does not belong to any one party. It belongs to the competency of people here in Jamaica. The unfortunate thing is that the way our political structure is set up is my side or your side. And I think that is part of the Achilles heel that continues to hold back the progress of Jamaica. And so it's up to the people to decide their best interest. You know, like I said, not to use, I don't want to use a phrase of Mr. Trump that there are good people on both sides, but or to say that there are bad people on both sides, rather. But the point here is that, you know, we have been stymied too long, and I think efforts we need to move beyond that.
But then I'm thinking that when I ask about governance, our government, you notice I stated that we're not talking about administration, we're talking about everybody.
Civil society included.
How would you think the civil society is doing as much as they ought to do?
No.
What are the areas in which they could improve?
Their involvement, because if civil society was really involved, then our paltry involvement in the political process, in the electoral process, would be more. So it means that they probably are not satisfied leadership. But are they availing themselves to come out and put themselves up? You see?
Yeah, because I'm looking at it, you know, and I can't help but ask, as it relates to support, one, involvement, two, I recognize that earlier, or in short, well, our elections, we have not had as much turnout as we would have liked, 20 to 30% on average. And you are saying that we're not engaged in the diaspora and civil service, or civil society is not being active. So is it a case whereby overall we just can't bother?
Well, and what has caused that?
Well, you tell me. You might be able to tell me because we're looking for an outside perspective.
Yeah. Leadership. And leadership from the stratas of society. We are heavily entrenched in religion. Church is full every Saturday and Sunday. How come we can't duplicate that into society, that zeal and vigor to do? We have great talents here. You know, when we go out on the international scene, Jamaicans are revered. You realize that? I mean, we have a curling team, for Christ's sakes. Curling.
Yeah, I know the sport.
Yeah, we have an ice hockey team. Hail up Don Anderson. Ice hockey team, for Christ's sakes. And people want to see what's going on down in Jamaica. We have you know, it's going to sports. We have a lacrosse team that we came 8th in the world last year.
Yeah.
Lacrosse. All right? So why is it that we're doing all those things? When our artist goes over the world and perform, thousands come out. So how come we're doing all those things and we're feeble? Well, for Christ's sakes, you go anywhere, you mention Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey. It evokes a whole lot of stuff. So, how come?
So I think that brings us back now, and it's good that we're closing on this note. It brings us back to where we started. And it seemed to me that what you are saying is that as a country, we doubt ourselves.
Yeah, because we have what it takes, you know. We have what it takes.
All right. So
we have what it takes.
Sir Clare, I want to thank you for making the time out to be a part of the conversation. And we want you to just, your final comments, you're talking to Irwine Clare. We're having a conversation with Irwine Clare, Managing Director of the Caribbean Immigrant Services, an avid sportsman, somebody from Bamboo Center.
Yeah, that's important.
So that's important.
Shelley Road, Bamboo.
Shelley Road, Bamboo.
Yeah.
Final comments.
Well, you know, I'm disappointed, Kwame, that, you know, this year Team Jamaica celebrating, you know, my pet project. I have to put a plug here, right? Celebrating 30 years of supporting our athletes. And I just want to say to the people of Jamaica, thank you for allowing us to serve your children when they come to the University of Pennsylvania for the Penn Relays. And thanking you for according us the opportunity to ensure that when they're there, they are in a safe environment, you know, providing all they can be. And for the past 30 years, we would have impacted between 13 and 15,000 athletes, and we still continue to serve. So, you know, that is part of our, I want to say, a contribution to nation building, you know, and making sure that the flag flies high. And over the, if you were to ask me 3 highlights over that 30 years? 2? I would say, when we hosted prime ministers from Jamaica, and the first time Jamaica's flag became the first foreign flag to fly on the oldest stadium, on the second oldest athletic event in the world at the University of Pennsylvania. So I thank you very much.
There you have it. You have heard it from the man himself, Sir Irwine Clare, the Order of Distinction, Managing Director of Caribbean Immigrant Services, as well as the founder and CEO, well, the founder and CEO of Team Bickle Jamaica, Team Jamaica Bickle.
Team Jamaica Bickle, yes.
Thank you very much for having taken the time out.
Thank you very much, Kwame.
Yes. This is The Conversation. I am Kwame Thomas. Thank you very much.